Good evening, beloved Unity on the Bay family. Happy Monday evening. Glad to be with you. Let me know that you're here by just putting something into the chat. I don't see the names of everybody that's viewing, but I do see the results of anything you put into the chat. So thank you for letting me know that you're here, and thank you for being a part of Shelf Discovery. And you heard me right, it is a shelf discovery about self-discovery, I suppose you could say, in the sense that every week on Monday evening, I stroll through the pages of one of my favorite books from the bookshelf behind me and share a little bit with you regarding insights that I've received from these, which are my favorite books. I sometimes refer to them as my Bibles. Dale Stein, love you, my brother. Glad you're here and hope you're feeling well. So we're here every Monday evening on Facebook Live and on YouTube. This is an interactive program. So while I have tonight especially quite a bit that I want to read from, please let me know your perspectives, and I'll try to remind you to remind me to keep letting you know that this is your program. So, and this includes whether you agree or disagree with anything I say. You know, I believe wholeheartedly that our own opinions and perspectives are vitally important. And I hope that I'm out of the school of thought that says that one individual has somehow more wisdom or insight or enlightenment than another. We're all in this together. So I'll be your student as well as your teacher, and you can be my teacher as well as my student. Hi, Pam. Nice to have you here tonight, and I'm really excited this evening because I went to the bookshelf, as I do in preparation every week, but I didn't find a book that really moved me until I moved a book. And by that, what I mean is I slid one book over and I found this little pamphlet that in many ways for me is more valuable than any book I've ever read. It's called The Golden Key by renowned New Thought lecturer, author, and teacher Emmet Fox. He wrote this in 1931. It is like 5 pages long. You can see that I noted all my favorite parts with highlights in here. He wrote it in 1931. In 1944, you could say he sort of gave it to the Unity movement by giving them the rights to publish it in the form of this little pamphlet, which has been a Unity classic now for decades. And I want to read to you tonight from the foreword by Emmet Fox, because I think it says a lot. The whole pamphlet says an enormous amount, but I think you'll catch this. Just listen to these words. Emmet Fox says, "I have condensed this message into 5 pages. Had it been possible, I would have condensed it into 5 lines. It is not intended to be an instructional treatise, but a practical guide for getting out of trouble. Study and research are well in their own time and place, but no amount of either will get you out of a difficulty. Nothing but practical work in your own consciousness will do that. The mistake made by many people when things go wrong is to start skimming through book after book without getting anywhere." So here he has put into 5 pages what he says if it had been conceivable or possible, he would have put into 5 lines. And it's called The Golden Key. It is a recipe to move you through any challenge or difficulty that you may face in your life. And it is based upon the fundamental metaphysical principle that which we think about becomes reality in our lives. That which we think about. This is essential to all New Thought teachings that I'm aware of. The power of our minds. And the ability that we have, the God-given ability, the gift, to be able to make decisions by free will as to that which we will be placing our attention on through the focus of our thought. You see this in many, many writings of different New Thought teachers from back into the 1800s and earlier. to the most contemporary of authors that we have in our midst today, the power of the mind. In Unity, we refer to it as the law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Hi, Ina. Golden Key. You knew that, eh? Yeah, well, if you're familiar with the Golden Key, and you can get this this pamphlet from Unity World Headquarters, just visit unity.org. Let's go on, because this is simple, but simple, as he says in the pages of this pamphlet, doesn't always mean easy. Emmet Fox says, God is omnipotent, and we are God's image and likeness and have dominion over all things. This is the inspired teaching, and it is intended to be taken literally at its face value. The ability to draw on this power is not the special prerogative of the mystic or the saint, as is so often supposed, or even the highly trained practitioner. Everyone has this ability. Whoever you are, wherever you may be, the golden key to harmony is in your hand now. This is because scientific prayer, which is the terminology that they utilized at the time this was written, first in the 1930s, scientific prayer, it is God who works, not you. And so your particular limitations or weaknesses are of no account in the process. You are only the channel through which the divine action takes place, and your treatment will be just the getting of yourself out of the way. I realize I can't hear you, but can I get an amen? I know that's true for me. The biggest challenge is always getting me out of my way, getting me and my conceptual mind and the limitations that I've adopted through my human conditioning, setting that aside, which is so difficult to do because these conditioned perspectives have been ruling and reigning in our lives for years upon years upon years. Some of them are blatantly conscious to us. We have no problem recognizing them, but many of them are operating at unconscious levels, which makes the task that much more challenging. You start to follow the advice in something like this, and you realize why the spiritual journey for most of us, the spiritual awakening journey, is as challenging and as long-lasting as it is, because we're constantly going through deeper and deeper levels of this conditioned mindset. Some people believe it's just the conditioning that we've received since we arrived on the planet this time around. Other individuals believe that this goes back into previous lifetimes. It's part of the collective consciousness of all humanity throughout the years. Whatever, what he's telling us here is that you don't have to worry about yourself in this process. You're only the channel. The big important key here is to get yourself, or get myself, out of the way. Hi, Marilyn. Wow, I'm so glad you're here tonight. Hi, Crystal. Glad you're with us. We're studying tonight a little bit of the brief but potent pamphlet, The Golden Key, by New Thought lecturer and author Emmet Fox, written in 1931 and released through the Unity movement in the 1940s. So let's go on a bit. He says, you're the only channel through which the divine action takes place, and your treatment will be just the getting yourself out of the way. Beginners actually get startling results for the first time. For all that is essential to have is an open mind and sufficient faith to try the experiment. So we're not going into this with a lot of demands, any more than it is a demand for you to be able to keep your mind open. And sometimes that is challenging. You are most welcome, Marilyn. I'm just glad you're here. Hi, Judy. Nice to have you with us. Now here we go into the meat, the crux, excuse me, of the Golden Key. As for the actual method of working, like all fundamental things, excuse me just a minute. Like all fundamental things, it is simplicity itself. All you have to do is this. Okay, are you ready? Take a deep breath. All you have to do to exercise, to practice the art of living in the golden key. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. Hi, David. Glad you're here. And thanks for letting me know you're here. I'll say it again. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. Now, do you realize that if we have adopted this fundamental principle that thoughts held in our mind produce after their kind, it would stand to reason and it would be expected that anytime we stop thinking about something, it's essential that it be eliminated from our experience, because it is being projected, it is being demonstrated in our experience by the power of our thought, which is the only power that ever has any ability to impact our lives. You know, so often, and I'm right there with you, we believe that our lives are being impacted by inescapable external circumstances and situations, and God knows difficult individuals that are showing up around every corner. And we know that in truth, at least we proclaim to know, that if we change the content of our mind, if we alter the content of our consciousness, then it is essential that our experience of reality reflect that. And that, I think, is what Emmet is getting at here. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. And he says this is the complete rule. And if you will only do this, the trouble, whatever it is, will disappear. And here comes the second big piece of this, and that is those wonderful qualities of faith and trust and belief and knowing. So we say often, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Our experience is the result of the content of our consciousness. Do we really believe it? And to what degree are we walking through our lives realizing or believing, if you choose to believe? I know some people very close to me that don't choose to believe this, that we are the creators of our own experience. I'm not saying we are the creators of ultimate reality here. There is an ultimate reality, which in unity we believe is God is absolute good everywhere present. But then there's your experience and there's my experience of that reality, which can be quite different because of the lens through which we are viewing that ultimate reality. And if we have clouded that lens with a lot of erroneous and false beliefs that we've invested our faith in, we're not going to be experiencing ultimate reality. We're going to be experiencing a filtered rendition of that reality based on the lenses or the paradigms through which we're viewing this ultimate reality of one presence, one power, God, and it's good. And now I completely lost my place in this little pamphlet, so bear with me just a moment. That's what he said. This is the complete rule. And if you will only do this, the trouble, whatever it is, will disappear. It seems impossible, doesn't it? I mean, doesn't it to you? Do you really believe that that all the challenges, all the difficulties, all the seeming obstacles in your life can disappear if you stop thinking about them? Interesting. I can see why some people are challenged or defensive about the validity of the unity way of life. But if we really believe it, my friends, this teaching here applies this golden key. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. It may be a little thing or it may be a big thing. It may be a concern regarding health, finance, a lawsuit, a quarrel, an accident, or anything else conceivable. But whatever it is, stop thinking about it and think about God instead. That's all you have to do. It's all you have to do. It could not be simpler, could it? God could scarcely have made it simpler, and yet it never fails to work when given a trial. Now he goes on to talk about what he means by thinking about God. Here we have the yes. By thinking about God. He says, do not try to form a picture of God, which is impossible. work by rehearsing anything or everything that you know about God. So we think God is wisdom, truth, inconceivable love. God is everywhere present. God has infinite power. God knows everything, and so on. It matters not how well you may think you understand these things. Go over them repeatedly. And it says the yogis will meditate for hours on only one mantra, God I am, knowing with God everything is possible, all powerful. Yes, ma'am. And that's why they do it, because they know that what their mind is focused on or fixed on is going to translate through the projector of their own consciousness and their own mind. Powerful stuff. But you must stop thinking about the trouble, whatever it is. The rule is to think about God. If you're thinking about your difficulties, you're not thinking about God. To be continually glancing over your shoulder in order to see how matters are progressing is fatal, he says, because it is thinking of the trouble, and you must think of God and nothing else. Your object is to drive the thought of the difficulty out of your consciousness for a few moments at least, substituting it for the thought of God. This is the crux of the whole thing. If you can become so absorbed in this consideration of the spiritual world that you forget for a while about the difficulty, you will find that you are safely and comfortably out of your difficulty, that your demonstration is made. Geraldo, good evening, Geraldo. When you say think about God, think what about God? And that's sort of just what he's answered here. However, let me go on to say that that whatever your concept of God is worth thinking about. Contemplation of God. As Ina was telling us, just the focus on the divine, however you conceive or perceive that to be, is sufficient. And you can utilize any of the adjectives or the words that describe divine faculties that are within you. So for me, on a daily basis, it's unconditional love, unconditional peace, unconditional joy, unconditional health, unconditional wealth, and relationships, all of which I consider to be a part of God. Relationships, of course, being unconditionally loving relationships. Don't want to get caught up in thinking about the difficult people. Sometimes the difficult people are so difficult because we're always thinking about how difficult they are. So you see, that is promoting it. David, hi, David. Love your sermons. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I enjoyed yesterday morning immensely too. It's always a pleasure to be speaking at Unity on the Bay. Now I lost my place again. I was really trying to make it all the way through this pamphlet in the program tonight. I was just checking the time. But the object is to drive the thought of the difficulty out of your consciousness for a few moments, at least, substituting it for the thought of God. This is the crux of the whole thing. If you can become so absorbed in this consideration of the spiritual world that you forget for a while about the difficulty, you will find you are safely and comfortably out of your difficulty, that your demonstration is made. This, in large part, I believe, let's see, Ina, thank you for sharing this. I appreciate the enforcement. I gave this pamphlet out for gifts, keeping it close to me. It's a gem, and I've read so much material. When I rediscovered this literally on my bookshelf tonight, I thought I actually wrote it down. Stop thinking about the difficulty and think about God instead. It's a keeper statement, and it does work every time. He goes on to say, if you find that you can do this very quickly, you may repeat the operation several times a day with intervals in between. Be sure, however, each time you have done it, that you drop all thought of the matter until the next time. This is important because remember, those thoughts about the difficulty that you're facing are the seeds that are germinating into that experience. We have said that the golden key is simple. Pardon me, I've already done that. If you are very frightened, and this is very true, if you are very frightened or worried, at first it may be difficult to get your thoughts away from material things. But by constantly repeating a statement of absolute truth, such as, there is no power but God, I am the child of God, filled and surrounded by the perfect peace of God. God is love. God is guiding me now. So this might be helpful to you in terms of understanding what is meant by contemplating God. God is with me. He says, however mechanical or even trite it may seem, you will soon find that the treatment has begun to take. Your mind is clearing. Treatment, of course, is the word that is used in religious science for the practice of prayer or meditation. And this is why meditation is so important. It makes it a lot easier to practice the golden key when you're in a state of meditation. But of course, we can't be in a state of meditation constantly. And he's not trying to teach us the art of meditation in the brief few pages of this pamphlet. But it's a reality for me anyway, that this is what I'm able to do most successfully in meditation. Because when my eyes are closed and when I'm relaxed as I can be physically, and when my mind is open and receptive, I find it much easier to let go of the difficulty. Because remember, my dear beloved friends, all difficulties are happening outside of you. When you close your eyes, you're symbolically expressing your willingness to close out the external world, so that you can put your focus on the internal world. And what's the internal world? At its core, it is what Jesus called the kingdom of God. It is the presence of God that is within you. And it helps a lot if you're able to still yourself, quiet your mind, close your eyes. And for those few moments that you are golden keying, you're able to truly more easily put your focus on God and on God's presence within you. Infinite wisdom is a good one. Yes, I know we do tend to become what we think, don't we? He says, do not try to think in advance what the solution to your difficulty will be. This is another thing, that the mind loves to do, is to get off on tangents about either the impossibility of a appropriate solution arriving on the scene, or to try to predict and control the way in which the difficulty needs to be resolved. And that, according to Emmet Fox in this pamphlet, is none of our business. And the mind just loves to make it our business. Have you noticed? It's very important. I have to figure this out. Remember what he said at the onset of this brief pamphlet, which was, this is not about you accomplishing anything yourself personally. This is about handing over the situation or the difficulty, letting it go, let God, giving it to this God presence, divine presence within you, and then trusting that and leaving the manner of resolution up to the universe, if you will, up to the divine. Stay out of your own way by not trying to predict or prescribe what you think the answer to the dilemma is. Because again, if you're trying to figure out what the solution to the problem is, you're still rooted in the problem. And we've got to get these problems that we have, according to law of mind action, created for ourselves out of our minds. We don't want them purchasing real estate. We don't want them pitching a tent in the campground. We don't even want them knocking at the door. We want them out of our mind, out of our consciousness, realizing that all difficulties are the result of thoughts of difficulties. I say more and more as I grow older, these teachings are not for the faint-hearted, and they are constantly revealing themselves at deeper and deeper levels of our being. He closes this pamphlet by sharing a scripture from the book of Acts, the 2nd chapter, 21st verse. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's so simple and yet so difficult to do when the compelling appearances, which you might recall Jesus told us never to judge by, when the compelling appearances of time and space and life are pressed in our face. And I don't have to ask you if the compelling experiences, we've made them into realities, but the appearances when they're pressing in our face, because that's what they're doing right now. Seems like more and more on every level. And I'm not discouraged by that, because I believe it's only when we can see the results of that which we've been holding in our minds individually as human beings and collectively as a human family, that we sometimes are pushed into this place of surrender. And it's only in that place of surrender, again, as he says, getting ourselves out of the way, that we can open ourselves to true and lasting solutions. So I hope this little jaunt through the pages of The Golden Key by Emmet Fox has been helpful for you. Again, you can pick this up by going to unity.org and visit their store there online. It's a brilliant, I think perhaps one of the most brilliant and certainly one of the briefest New Thought dissertations, perspectives ever presented. And it has stood the test of time. I dare say millions of individuals have had their difficulties and their challenges and their dilemmas in life resolved. And it's just these words again. Stop thinking about the difficulty and think about God instead. Thank you, Dale. Love you bunches. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful Monday evening. I think they were predicting some rain out there, but I haven't seen it yet. Have a terrific week, and I look forward to seeing you again next Monday, 6 p.m., Shelf Discovery, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Love you with all of my heart, and God bless you.